The observation vessel Harmony maintained its position just beyond Earth's lunar orbit. Captain Kim stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back. The blue-green planet filled the large window, peaceful from this distance, despite the turbulent civilization developing on its surface. "How long have we been watching them?" asked Officer Lee, approaching quietly to stand beside his commander. "3 standard cycles," Kim replied, not turning from the view. "The Consortium Council believes they're ready for contact." Lee's expression revealed his doubts. He touched the display panel, bringing up images of ongoing conflicts across Earth. They still fight among themselves. Their nations remain divided. "The Council sees potential," Kim said, his voice steady. "Their technological progress in the last century has been remarkable." The main screen displayed Earth's continents, focusing on the political boundaries. Each nation glowed with a different color, a patchwork of authorities and ideologies. The consortium had studied each major power carefully, assessing their readiness for first contact. "They went from primitive flight to space travel in less than 100 years, Kim noted. "No other species we've encountered moved so quickly, or created so many weapons along the way," Lee countered. Kim finally turned from the viewport. "Perhaps that adaptability is what we need. The consortium has grown comfortable." Lee wanted to argue but knew better. The captain rarely shared such thoughts, and when he did, it meant he had been considering them for some time. "Prepare the diplomatic vessel," Kim ordered. "We make contact at their United Nations assembly tomorrow." The crew moved with efficiency, preparing the sleek silver craft that would carry the first official delegation to Earth. Kim selected his team carefully: scientists, cultural experts, and security personnel who showed the most promise in understanding human behavior. "Remember," Kim told them as they boarded, "these humans have only seen their own kind as intelligent life. We represent not just ourselves, but all non-Earth species. First impressions will shape centuries of interaction." The journey to Earth took mere minutes with their technology. They positioned their craft above New York City, sending advance notice through Earth's primitive communication systems. The humans, to their credit, responded quickly, clearing airspace and preparing their United Nations facility. Captain Kim felt a flutter of nervous energy as their craft descended. Millions of humans watched through their media networks. This moment would be recorded in the histories of both civilizations. The arrival of the alien delegation at the UN caused exactly the reaction the consortium had expected: shock, awe, and careful diplomatic responses. Armed guards lined the halls but kept their weapons lowered. Political leaders tried to hide their fear behind diplomatic smiles. Captain Kim addressed the General Assembly, explaining the consortium's peaceful mission and offering technological exchange. His translator device converted his musical language into Earth's various tongues. "We come as friends and potential allies," Kim said. "The consortium believes in peaceful cooperation between all intelligent species. We offer knowledge, technology, and connection to the wider galactic community." The room buzzed with whispers. Representatives from nearly 200 Earth nations exchanged glances, some excited, others suspicious. Kim had studied enough human history to understand their caution. For most of their existence, contact with outsiders had often meant conquest. What they hadn't anticipated was the American response. While most nations requested days or weeks to formulate official positions, the American delegation approached the aliens immediately after the session concluded. Other representatives were still huddled in discussion groups when General Park, the American military attaché, walked directly to Captain Kim. "We'd like to discuss practical implementation of your propulsion systems," said General Park, "and we have some ideas about joint exercises to establish protocols." Captain Kim blinked his 4 eyes in succession, the consortium equivalent of surprise. He had expected theological questions, philosophical debates, or fearful retreats. The practical nature of this approach caught him unprepared. "You wish to begin collaboration immediately?" he asked. The American ambassador, Director Han, stepped forward with a smile. "Why wait? You're here. We're here. Let's get to work. Kim glanced at his cultural expert, who seemed equally confused. Their briefings had suggested Americans might be more aggressive or suspicious than other nations. Instead, they showed an eagerness that bordered on impatience. We have facilities ready, General Park continued. Our scientists have already reviewed the public transmission data from your ship's approach. They have questions. Many questions, Director Han added with a small laugh. Americans are curious by nature, and we don't like to waste time. Captain Kim felt a new sensation, something like excitement mixed with caution. In thousands of years of first contacts, the consortium had developed careful protocols. The Americans seemed ready to ignore those protocols entirely. We would be pleased to begin discussions, Kim said carefully. Though typically we establish cultural exchange before technological sharing. General Park nodded respectfully but persisted. Of course, cultural understanding is vital, but perhaps we can do both simultaneously. Time is always a factor. As other nations' representatives hung back, the Americans led the alien delegation to a prepared conference room. Within an hour, American scientists were showing the visitors their current understanding of physics, asking pointed questions about discrepancies with consortium technology. On the diplomatic vessel that night, Captain Kim recorded his observations. The humans are more diverse in their approaches than anticipated, he noted, but the Americans in particular show an adaptability and directness that may prove either troublesome or invaluable in the days ahead. I suspect we have much to learn from each other. 6 months after first contact, Earth had changed. Consortium technology appeared in smartphones, cars, and medical devices. People looked at the stars differently now, knowing they were not alone. The consortium embassy in New York became a tourist attraction. Captain Kim found himself giving more interviews than he had expected. He answered the same questions repeatedly. Yes, there were many alien species. No, humans were not the least advanced. Yes, Earth culture was unique in many ways. What he did not tell them was the real reason the consortium had sought Earth. That truth was reserved for today. Captain Kim requested an emergency session of the UN Security Council. The 15 members gathered in the private chamber, away from cameras and reporters. Kim arrived with only his most trusted advisors. "Thank you for meeting on such short notice," Kim began, his translator device making his alien speech sound almost human. "We have not been entirely forthcoming about our presence here." The American representative leaned forward. The Russian diplomat narrowed his eyes. "There is a threat to all sentient life in this sector of the galaxy," Kim continued. The room fell silent as Kim activated a small device on the table. A holographic display appeared above it, showing thousands of stars. At the edge of the map, a dark shadow spread like spilled ink across several systems. They call themselves the Vrek. They are a hive species that consumes all in its path. For centuries, the consortium has contained them, but recently they have evolved. Our defenses are failing. Kim watched the humans study the map. Some showed fear, others disbelief. The American representative's face remained calm, calculating. The Vrek destroy planets to harvest resources. They see other life forms as either food or competition, Kim explained. We have fought them for generations, keeping them at the edges of known space. "Why tell us now?" asked the Chinese representative. Kim touched the controls again. The map shifted to show the advancing darkness moving closer to a small blue dot. "Earth," Kim said simply. "The Vrek will eventually reach your solar system if they are not stopped. We estimate 50 Earth years at their current rate of advance." The UN Secretary General leaned forward. "What are you asking of Earth?" "Assistance, resources, perhaps new perspectives. The consortium's traditional methods are no longer effective. The Vrek have adapted to our tactics." The British representative shook her head. "We've barely begun to understand your technology. How could we possibly help fight an enemy that has defeated your advanced civilization?" "Sometimes old problems need new eyes," Kim replied. "Humans think differently than consortium species. You take risks. You innovate under pressure. The room erupted into debate. The French delegate suggested forming a scientific committee. The Brazilian representative wanted more information about VREC weaknesses. The Russian wanted defensive technologies for Earth. As the Security Council debated forming committees to study the problem, the American representatives were already making calls on their secure devices. Kim noticed this, but said nothing. After the meeting, General Park approached Kim privately. "We need everything you have on these VREC," Park said. "Biological data, battle recordings, weapon specifications. The Consortium Council has not authorized complete information sharing," Kim replied carefully. General Park smiled thinly. "Captain, you just told us about a threat to our existence. Either we're partners in this fight, or we're not." Kim hesitated, then nodded. "I will speak with my superiors." 3 weeks later, Kim found himself in a desert. The Nevada facility looked like an ordinary military base from outside, but underground stretched vast laboratories and workshops. Here, human and consortium scientists worked side by side. Professor Choi led the tour. The small woman moved quickly through the facility, pointing out various projects combining human and alien technology. "This is what I wanted to show you," she said, stopping at a sealed chamber. Inside sat a device no larger than a car engine, a prototype based on your energy distribution systems. Kim recognized the consortium components, but not the overall design. "This is a weapon." "Yes, we modified the principles of your ship engines and combined them with our projectile weapon experience." The demonstration took place in an underground range. When Professor Choi activated the device, a beam of blue-white energy shot across the testing area. The target, made of thick metal, didn't just melt, it disintegrated. The power output is 300% higher than anything in the consortium arsenal, she explained to the gathered officials. The readings on her tablet showed energy levels Kim had never seen in a portable device. Captain Kim stared at the device in astonishment. "How did you develop this so quickly? The energy stabilization alone should have taken years to perfect." General Park shrugged. "We've been at this sort of thing for a while." Later, walking back to the transport, Lee whispered to Kim, "This is concerning. We've given them technology they could use against us." Kim watched the humans working ahead of them, already discussing improvements to the prototype. "No," Kim said quietly. "I think we found exactly what we were looking for. The consortium has grown cautious over centuries of peace. These humans don't have that luxury. You think they can help against the VREC?" Kim looked back at the testing range, where the metal target had been reduced to dust. "I think the VREC have never encountered anything like humans before. And neither have we." Senior consortium anthropologist G sat in a bright Houston diner, poking at a slice of apple pie. Across the booth, his human liaison, Dr. Song, sipped coffee. Outside the window, the massive NASA complex sprawled across the Texas landscape. Jai had spent 3 months on Earth studying human behavior. Of all the species the consortium had encountered, humans were perhaps the most contradictory. And of all humans, Americans seemed the most puzzling. At a nearby table, 4 engineers from the Space Center argued loudly. Their debate about engine cooling systems grew more animated with each passing minute. They drew diagrams on napkins, interrupted each other, and occasionally laughed despite their disagreements. "I don't understand," G said to Dr. Song. "In the consortium, such disagreement would be mediated by consensus algorithms. Here, they seem to enjoy the conflict." Dr. Song laughed, setting down her coffee mug. "That's how we get to better ideas. We crash them together and see what survives." "Inefficient," Jai remarked, watching one engineer dramatically crumple a napkin sketch. "But effective," Song countered. She pushed her plate aside and leaned forward. "Your civilization has been stable for millennia, but how many truly revolutionary advances have you made in that time?" G considered this. The consortium valued stability and harmony. New technologies were introduced slowly, carefully tested for social impact before full deployment. It had created a peaceful society spanning hundreds of worlds. "We have achieved balance," G said finally. "Our progress is measured and certain." "And predictable," Song added. "That's what your Captain Kim told me last week. The Vrek have learned to predict your responses." G frowned. The Vrek threat remained classified, but apparently the Americans had been fully briefed. Before G could answer, their communication devices chimed simultaneously. The sound made other diners look up briefly before returning to their meals, now accustomed to alien technology. Dr. Song checked her device first, her face growing serious. G saw the same message on his screen. The Vrek had broken through the consortium's defensive perimeter at Sector 7. 3 allied worlds were gone, billions of lives lost in a single attack. "We should go," Song said quietly, already signaling for the bill. They rode back to the consortium embassy in silence. She watched the Houston streets pass by. Children playing, couples walking, normal life continuing. These humans had no idea how fragile their existence might be. "Your people will fight, won't they?" Jai asked suddenly. Dr. Song glanced at him. "Americans, of course. It's what we do. Even against an enemy like the Vrek. Especially against an enemy like the Vrek." She smiled slightly. "We actually prefer an enemy that's clearly evil. Makes things simpler." At the embassy, staff moved with urgent purpose. News of the attack had reached everyone. G made his way to Captain Kim's office, expecting to find him in an emergency conference with Consortium Command. Instead, Kim sat alone, watching footage on a large screen. G recognized historical images of Earth battles, ancient humans with swords, World War tanks in muddy fields, modern soldiers in desert combat. "What are you doing?" G asked. "Learning," Kim replied simply. He didn't look away from the screen, where soldiers crawled through jungle undergrowth. G moved closer. "Our people are dying. 3 worlds are gone. Shouldn't we be coordinating with Command?" "Command has no new strategies to offer." Kim finally turned from the screen. "They'll recommend the same defensive posture we've held for centuries. The same posture the Vrek just broke through." "Then what alternative do we have?" Kim gestured to the battle footage. "The Consortium has forgotten something these humans, especially these Americans, never had the luxury to forget." "What's that?" "How to fight when peace isn't an option." Kim stood and walked to a wall map showing Consortium territory. "We've maintained peace for so long that we've forgotten how to think like warriors. Our tactics are predictable because they're designed to minimize loss, not maximize victory." Chid joined him at the map. "And humans think differently." "Come," Kim said instead of answering. "I want to show you something." They took a transport to the Joint Human Consortium facility outside the city. Here, human and alien scientists worked together on technology-sharing projects. Kim led G to a section he hadn't visited before. Inside a large workshop, humans tested equipment that combined Consortium materials with Earth designs. G recognized weapons, but unlike anything the Consortium had developed. "Captain Tay," Kim called to a human military officer. "Show anthropologist G the new targeting system." The woman nodded and activated a display. "We combined your sensing technology with our predictive targeting algorithms. Your systems scan for known patterns. Ours look for patterns changing." Jai watched the demonstration. Where Consortium systems sought stability, human systems anticipated disruption. Where Consortium defenses formed barriers, human weapons created openings. "The Vrek adapt to patterns," Captain Todd explained. "So we built systems that constantly change their attack profile. They evolve faster than the Vrek can adapt." As they left the facility, G was quiet. Everything he had studied about humans suddenly made more sense. Their chaotic politics, their endless debates, their strange mix of cooperation and competition. "You believe humans can defeat the Vrek where we failed?" G finally asked. Kim looked up at the darkening Texas sky. I believe that any species that went from horse-drawn carriages to the moon in less than a century should not be underestimated. He turned to Je. And I believe that sometimes, to preserve peace, you must remember how to wage war. The shipyards at Proxima Centauri gleamed against the backdrop of space. This was humanity's first major off-world installation, built with consortium technology, but shaped by American ambition. The massive structure could construct and repair both human and alien vessels. Colonel Min walked the bridge of the U.S. Lexington with quiet pride. The ship represented the best of both worlds. Human design philosophy combined with consortium technology. While consortium vessels were elegant and efficient, the Lexington had been built for combat. Its lines were sleeker, its weapons more numerous, its shields positioned to allow for aggressive maneuvering. "System check complete," Colonel, reported Officer Ba from her station. "All systems operating at optimal levels." Min nodded. The Lexington had just completed its final testing phase and would soon join the Joint Human Consortium Defense Fleet. For now, they remained at Proxima for minor adjustments. "Begin crew rotation for the next shift," Min ordered. "I want everyone well rested before we—" His communication officer turned suddenly in his chair. "Sir, emergency transmission from Consortium Command. The Vrek have launched an assault on the Talaris shipyards. All available vessels are ordered to form a defensive perimeter." The bridge fell silent. Talaris was one of the Consortium's most important construction facilities, where their largest ships were built. If it fell, the war effort would suffer a devastating blow. Min checked the stellar map that appeared on the main screen. "We're the closest combat-ready vessel. How long to Talaris?" 4 hours at maximum translation speed," replied the navigation officer. Min narrowed his eyes. "What's the consortium protocol?" The communication officer checked his screen. "Hold position and await the formation of a defense fleet. Admiral Jun is assembling ships from the Third Fleet. Estimated arrival time at Talaris, 14 hours. Min shook his head. "Inform Consortium Command we're moving to engage, and contact any Earth vessels in range to rendezvous at Talaris." Officer Ba looked up with concern. "Sir, the Consortium Admiral is specifically ordering us to wait for—" "We're not waiting while people die," Min interrupted. "Set course for Talaris, maximum speed." As the Lexington entered translation space, Min briefed his crew. The Vrek attack force consisted of approximately 30 vessels. 3 consortium ships were already defending the shipyards, but reports indicated they were losing ground. "The consortium tactics are predictable," Min explained. "They form defensive perimeters and hold position. The Vrek have learned to counter this approach. We will do something different." 4 hours later, the Lexington dropped out of translation space near Talaris. The scene before them was chaos. The massive shipyards, once a marvel of engineering, now bore great wounds in their structure. Fires burned in sections exposed to space. Consortium vessels maintained a tight formation, their energy shields weakening under constant attack. The Vrek ships were unlike anything built by humans or the Consortium. They resembled massive insects, their hulls covered with spines and protrusions. They moved with unnatural coordination, like parts of a single organism. "They're just holding position," Min's tactical officer observed, pointing to the Consortium defenders. "The Vrek are picking them apart." Min studied the enemy formation. Years of military training told him what he was seeing. The Vrek had evolved tactics specifically to counter Consortium defense protocols. They attacked in waves, testing shields at different points, never committing fully until they found a weakness. "They've never faced an opponent that doesn't follow their protocols," Min said. "Launch fighters, asymmetric pattern delta. Target their command nodes with the new hybrid weapons." The Lexington released its fighter craft. Small, agile vessels piloted by humans who had trained for this moment. Instead of forming a defensive screen as Consortium fighters would, they scattered in all directions, approaching the wreck from multiple vectors simultaneously. On the main screen, Min watched as his fighters executed maneuvers no consortium tactical computer would have recommended, high-risk, high-reward attacks that targeted what human analysts had identified as Vrek command nodes. The Vrek response was telling. Faced with an unpredictable attack pattern, their perfect coordination faltered. Some ships broke formation to chase human fighters. Others maintained their attack on the consortium defenders. Their hive-mind advantage became a weakness as conflicting priorities emerged. Their hive coordination breaks down when the command nodes are isolated. Min noted as the battle turned. They've never had to adapt to unpredictable attacks. The Lexington itself moved directly into the heart of the Vrek formation, firing its main weapons at the largest enemy vessel. The hybrid energy cannons, human design with consortium power sources, cut through Vrek shields with unprecedented effectiveness. 2 more Earth vessels arrived, responding to Min's call. They immediately joined the asymmetric attack pattern, further confusing the Vrek response. Within an hour, the tide had turned. The Vrek, facing an enemy they couldn't predict, began to retreat. Their losses mounted as human fighters pursued them, targeting engines and weapon systems. When the consortium reinforcements finally arrived, they found the Vrek fleet in retreat and Colonel Min coordinating salvage operations around the damaged shipyards. The consortium admiral, Jun, transported to the Lexington immediately. Min met him in the docking bay, standing tall despite his exhaustion. "You disobeyed direct orders," Admiral Jun said without preamble. Min nodded. "I did. And saved this installation." Jun's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. He hesitated, then continued. "The consortium would like to discuss your tactical approach." Min allowed himself a small smile. "We call it asymmetric warfare, Admiral. It's been part of human military doctrine for centuries." Jun looked past Min to where human and consortium crews worked side by side, repairing damage to the shipyards. "Perhaps," Jun said slowly, "the consortium has been fighting the wrong way for too long. Perhaps we need to learn from humans how to think like the enemy." "Not like the enemy," Min corrected. "Just unpredictably enough that the enemy can't anticipate our next move." Jun considered this. "The Vrek will adapt to your tactics eventually. Then we'll change our tactics again," Min said simply. "That's the advantage humans have always had. We never stop adapting." The great hall of the consortium Central Council gleamed with light from 1,000 stars visible through its crystal dome. Located on the consortium homeworld, this chamber had hosted historic meetings for over 5,000 years. Yet never before had it welcomed representatives from Earth. Today made history. The massive circular chamber was filled to capacity with delegates from 100 worlds. At the center stood the American president, flanked by military officers and scientists who had helped turn the tide of war. Captain Kim watched from his position with the honor guard. 2 years had passed since he first visited Earth. In that time, everything had changed. The Vrek threat that had seemed unstoppable was now contained. The impossible had been achieved. The president stepped forward to address the assembly. His voice carried clearly through the hall without need for translation devices. All consortium members had learned English, the new language of galactic defense. The combined Earth consortium fleet has pushed the Vrek back to their home systems, the president announced. For the first time in a millennium, they are contained. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many had doubted this day would come. Some had opposed working with humans at all, seeing them as primitive and dangerous. Now those same critics sat in respectful silence. The council leader, Sung, rose from his ornate seat. His species was one of the oldest in the consortium, known for wisdom and careful deliberation. Humanity, particularly the American approach, has brought perspectives we had not considered in our millennia of existence, Sung said. Where we sought harmony, you found strength in diversity. Where we built consensus, you embraced creative conflict. Kim remembered the early days of the Alliance, when consortium military leaders had watched in horror as human commanders like Colonel Min ignored established protocols. Those same tactics had now been adopted throughout the combined fleet. The Vrek believed they understood us. Sung continued. They had studied our patterns for centuries and adapted accordingly. But they could not predict humans. Your species thinks in ways that confounded their hive intelligence. The Battle of Teleris had been just the beginning. In the months that followed, human-led forces had launched surprising offensives. Where the consortium had always fought defensively, humans struck at Vrek supply lines and communication nodes. Where consortium tactics were methodical, humans employed chaos and misdirection. The treaty that followed the speeches established Earth as a full member of the consortium, with special recognition of America's contribution to the war effort. Earth would receive technology transfers that would have normally taken centuries to earn. In return, human military strategies would be taught throughout consortium space. Professor Choi, whose weapons designs had changed the course of the war, signed the technology exchange protocols. General Park, whose battle plans had reclaimed 3 lost worlds, signed the military agreements. When the formal ceremony ended, the Great Hall transformed for celebration. Species that had never visited Earth sampled human foods and listened to human music. Captain Kim found himself standing beside Dr. Song, who had served as a cultural liaison during the early days of contact. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you first arrived at Earth?" she asked. Kim shook his head. "We came looking for allies against the Vrek. We found something we needed far more." "What was that?" "A reminder of what we once were," Kim said. "The consortium grew so focused on peace that we forgot how to defend it." Across the hall, human soldiers exchanged stories with consortium veterans. Already, the distinct boundaries between their cultures were blurring. Human adaptability was spreading through consortium society, while human scientists eagerly embraced the stability of consortium research methods. As the human delegation prepared to depart for their ships, 2 ancient consortium elders watched from a secluded balcony above the celebration. These leaders had seen centuries pass, had witnessed the rise and fall of many threats to peace. "Everything has changed," said the first elder, Rin. "Our society will never be the same." "Indeed," replied the other, Tam. "We had grown complacent in our peace. We had forgotten that the galaxy contains predators as well as philosophers." Below them, the American president laughed with council leader Sung, already discussing new joint projects. Exploration vessels that would push beyond known space, research centers that would combine the best of both cultures. When did the balance shift? Rin asked, watching the humans with a mixture of concern and admiration. When did victory become possible? Tan looked out at the stars visible through the crystal dome. Stars now safer than they had been in centuries. Worlds that had lived in fear of the Vrek, now planned for futures of peace and prosperity. "It all changed," he said quietly, when the Americans arrived. In the docking bay, Captain Kim said farewell to the human officers he had fought alongside. Colonel Min, now General Min, clasped his hand in the human gesture of friendship. "Will you visit Earth again?" Min asked. "Often," Kim promised. "My new assignment is to oversee the Joint Defense Academy in your Colorado. I have much to learn about your mountain warfare techniques." As the human ships departed, carrying the delegation back to Earth, Kim watched the stars from the observation deck. The universe had become both more dangerous and more hopeful than the consortium had ever imagined. And somewhere out there, the Vrek were adapting, evolving, preparing for the next confrontation. But so were humans, and so now was the consortium. The end.